today we are joined by the beautiful Kristian Colegate, who is a general manager who's, as his own description, quietly been leading one of the more sustained applications for the emotional culture tech that we've seen inside a complex business environment. So whilst a lot of people on this community are facilitators or working external to an organization, Kristian's one of these amazing kind of humans who is putting it to work every single day in his business. So over the last 2 years, he's embedded the ECD into leadership, change, performance practices across a large male-dominated manufacturing and construction business. As we had a discussion before, and it hasn't always been easy, but it definitely has been real. So his story is one of persistence, reflection, and using the emotional culture not as a side project, but as a key part of the leadership system. So please welcome Kristian to the floor.
Thanks, Kaylee. Really appreciate it. Before I start, everyone can hear me okay? Yep, thumbs up. And everyone can see the presentation on the screen?
Sure can.
Yeah. Awesome, no worries. My first time driving Circle for presentations, so this is my advance apology if you find me fumbling around or looking extremely nervous. Anyway, so welcome. Thanks for joining today. I've had a bit of a tech fail with a second monitor here. So this is a really great example of just having to roll with it, I guess. So you'll apologize if I'm just looking down at some of my speaker notes. So I apologize if that distracts you. So I really want to welcome you to today. I hope you get some value out of it. I'm really excited, grateful, humbled and proud to engage with you today. I'm also feeling a little nervous, anxious. I just cranked up with my tech fail. A little bit intimidated and uncertain. There's a lot of horsepower and some great experience in this community, which I value greatly. Unfortunately, one of the side effects is sometimes you feel a little nervous and anxious about it. So hopefully you'll bear with me. Anyway, I know I'm in the right place at the right time for this, which is the main thing. So I want to take you on a very real and grounded journey that many of you will resonate with, especially if you've ever tried to embed emotion culture in an environment that wasn't asking for it. My story is about starting from a place of cultural resistance, not cultural readiness. Over the past 2 years, the company that I work in, we've built emotional leadership capability in a male-dominated, technically skilled operational business that spans 17 locations across Australia, and roughly about 800 people in my division, and around 1,500 to 2,000 people at any given time in the broader group. A textbook or external mandate that didn't drive this. It started from the top and was shaped by practical need, most definitely. And I'll share what we did while we chose each move that we made, how we aligned emotional culture with business performance, change leadership, and strategic transformation. I had to work out how to advance the slide. Sorry. Okay. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, still. I can't see you, just saying. So, little graphic there on the screen just to sort of give you a bit of a view and a bit of a pictorial description of the challenge here. Okay, so the prevailing business landscape. So I'll set the scene. So our business divisionally and operationally, also technically, is very complex. Think about glass, aluminium. Think about windows and doors, the things you look through when you're in your home every day or in your office every day. Fabrication of those products, so very much a traditional manufacturing business, a vertically integrated supply chain in Australia, out of Brisbane predominantly, and then distribution and installation. I'm getting a little bit of mic feedback, so I'm just going to mute, if that's okay, a couple of people. Can I do that, Kaylee? Can we do that? I don't know if we can do that. If you could mute yourself. That would be great. I think, Claire, I'm getting quite a bit of feedback from yourself, if that's cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. Sorry. Okay, so leaders were previously promoted based on technical expertise and tenure, not capability. Unclear expectations had led to entitlement and, in some cases, exploitation. The cultural inheritance was one of command and control, low trust, fear-based compliance, and a level of disregard and even resistance to emotion in the workplace. Emerging issues included a generational shift and disconnect, poor retention, absenteeism, management over leadership, and emotional disconnection and suppression at many levels. So quite the challenge. There was no grassroots energy for vision and values, let alone emotional culture. So starting with my GM at the time, and to be clear, I am now the GM, so we had a transition in there as well. A female executive and future family successor, hardened from a decade in this workplace, but hiding a highly intelligent, sensitive, and empathetic mother of three. We formed a powerful duo and deliberately chose to go top down with emotion culture. The issue with emotional contagion at the time presented a challenge with a bottom-up approach that we didn't feel would be able to be successful. So it was the only entry point with enough influence and visibility to create the ripples we needed to influence and build a small cohort of senior managers who might embrace the beginnings of this change, and in doing so, trigger a strategic transformation. I can still recall pulling out the ECD with her and doing a basic check-in, watching her tears as the aha moment unfolded for her. So, culture crafting with the senior team. So we began our senior leadership team, the most influential group in our division. This wasn't a warm and welcoming start, to be clear. Our first ECD culture crafting workshop was awkward, not just for me in facilitating it, but also for the team. There were long silences, resistance, reluctance to engage, and emotional muscle memory wasn't there yet. But what made it powerful was our decision to stay with it. We worked with the ECD to define what we, as a senior team, needed to feel and not feel to be effective and human-centered in our roles. This wasn't just about culture, it was about establishing and redefining our leadership presence. That clarity created psychological permission for every layer beneath. Modeling vulnerability, reflection, and accountability with intention towards our emotion culture was the first ripple of emotional contagion. Three months later, roughly, we extended the work to our branch managers, the direct reports of the senior team, and the first touch at the coalface of our business. So here we flipped the perspective to provide a level of safety. And instead of focusing on how we feel, we explored what our people needed to feel and not feel to be successful in our work. So an application there of the ECD leadership framework. This helped our branch managers and leaders, excuse me, see their behaviour through the eyes and the lens of their team. Servant-based leadership was awakened. It changed the conversation from directing tasks to shaping the emotional climate and the behaviours that might bring our people towards our values, or what we believed at the time would be our values, given that that was also underway, so that we might achieve outcomes and provide better autonomy. They started connecting disengagement, absenteeism, and even safety incidents to feelings like overwhelm, disconnection, and uncertainty. That's when the emotional culture work started to shift behaviours and not just the mindsets. At the time, we implemented a new values program, and think traditional corporate hygiene values here, much to my frustration at the time, using our defined emotional climate as the Trojan horse to shape and direct behaviours towards our values in action and onwards towards a better culture. About 12 months after that, we ran a third session focusing on leading change. Given the experiences of the senior leaders and managers, the branch leaders and managers, we felt it necessary, as initially this work and this vacuum that we had started to fill of leadership presented for them significant challenges just in terms of their workload and in terms of what we're expecting them to do with their people as they work to transform the individual cultures and subcultures within their business. We focused this session on leading change, and we did these at our annual conferences that we held. And this time, integrating the ECD with our formal change methodology, which a lot of you would know, which was the ADKAR framework, part of the ProSci change program. We used the white undesired feeling cards to name what was getting in the way of change, such as fear, confusion, uncertainty. And we used the black cards to articulate what people needed to feel to move forward, which was involved, supported, connected, and encouraged, to name a few. This helped leaders take personal ownership of creating the emotional conditions for change. It aligned perfectly with the awareness, desire, and knowledge stages of ADKAR, which you can see on the screen there if you're not familiar. So this is where emotional culture and change leadership fully converged for us, not as competing tools, but more as integrated systems of human behavior. This was the best I could do on this slide to convey our approach. So it probably reads a little bit different. I think normally you might expect the group and divisions to be at the top, but given it was top down, it was probably the best I could do to try and pictorially represent it for you. So 2 days ago, which is why I'm still a little bit dusty, we rolled out the leadership workshops across the entire group. And I'll go on to some examples in our Miro to share with you at the end of the presentation. So 100 leaders, every divisional leader and their senior team participated, crafting the feelings required for our team's success, understanding how we might know that's occurring, and agreeing on what we need to watch out for to ensure we don't derail our intentions. So very much a traditional workshop to work through the leadership canvas using the leadership framework and the ECD. We will facilitate 5 further workshops to ensure this work becomes further woven into the fabric of how we lead, defining our specific divisional actions and routines and how we will deepen their meaning to create rituals, not just a set of conversations. So if you're familiar with the leadership canvas, and I will throw it up at the end of this session as well. We went through our desired and undesired feelings. We carved up the workshop a little bit to allow us to work through the empathy and the undesired behaviours, right, as a group of divisions and divisional leaders, with 5 future workshops structured to allow us to individualise the leadership canvases to those divisions and their specific operating and cultural conditions. Alongside this, we've embedded emotional culture into induction and onboarding, safety conversations, toolbox talks, leadership discussions. We're in the middle of a lean implementation with emotion culture and the change framework integrated throughout. And even our campaign around improving attendance and absenteeism called show up for your mates. In my view, this is what systematic culture change looks like. It's emotional language showing up in everyday practices, not just special workshops. We're building emotion culture into the system, not just our story. We expected resistance, and we saw it, definitely. Some leaders joked their way through the early moments, avoided eye contact, or stayed silent. But we didn't push for disclosure. We created safety and trusted that readiness would vary, which was extremely difficult if you're a perfectionist like me that battles with that every day and you just want everyone to get on board. The breakthrough came when one leader said they felt alienated and disconnected from their team. That moment unlocked the room. Suddenly, it seemed like it became okay to be real. From that point, we saw language, behavior, and mindsets start to change. Leaders began reflecting and regulating before reacting. They became more intentional about how they showed up and influenced their team's emotional tone more. So now to the question that always comes, does this work make a difference to business performance? Well, the answer for us is yes. We've seen lower turnover in branches where the ECD is embedded. We've seen higher engagement in teams where leaders talk about emotion. Our safety reporting improved where emotional culture and climate was better integrated into pre-starts and toolbox talks. We now treat emotional culture as a strategic performance lever. We measure it through retention, engagement, 360 survey feedback, and leadership capability assessments. Most importantly, we've shifted our leadership system. So how we define, develop, and measure leadership has now changed. So if I think about what I've learned and what I'd say to you, this work's changed me as much as it changed our organisation. So I think it's important to be open and honest about that. I've learned that emotional culture isn't a bolt-on, all right? It's the base layer holding up everything else. Performance, safety, trust, and change. And it does that by way of allowing us to shape behaviours and be intentional about that. So my advice, if I could humbly provide it to you, is to start where you have influence. Never oversell it. You've just got to show it. And sometimes that can be challenging. Finding and understanding the right place to do that or the right person to do that with. We must let the ECD do the work it's designed to do. And I know that message is always conveyed through all of the training and most of the workshops and series like this one I'm giving you now. But it is entirely true. The deck in itself is a wonderful tool. It's a great circuit breaker. It disconnects perhaps the thinking part of the brain and allows, the feeling part of the brain to take over. I think it's important to remember this is an infinite game. Thank you, Simon Sinek, for that one. Culture shifts through consistency, not charisma. If you model it and you live it, your leaders will definitely follow. I like to say culture is lived, not laminated. Putting values up on the wall, breaking those values down into what it looks like into action is extremely important. For those of you who understand the intersection of the ECD and values, there's some really great potential in that. And certainly I've done some work with that. We don't always have the opportunity in organisations, though, to steer values away from hygiene type values such as integrity, safety, our people, etc. So I think it's really, really important then to understand that the use of the ECD is not limited, but can certainly be utilised to understand and design with intent the behaviours required to allow people to live into those values, and then what those actions might look like for employees and leaders when we break those behaviours down into tangible actions and rituals and routines. So I'm keen to sort of open the space up. I'd love to understand what you're curious about around what I've delivered. What tensions are you navigating in your own ECG journeys, or have you seen from your clients? Feel free to ask about challenges, integration, sustainability, or anything you've heard that resonates today. Happy for you to provoke as well and do my best to respond. What I'd like to do, if you're thinking of some questions now, you can certainly fire them off, is I might just, while you're doing that, just switch the share over to perhaps just quickly show you what we have done in Miro, which has really become the central application that's allowed us to continue to do this work, whether our teams are on-site, hybrid, or remote. So I'm open to questions, if anyone's got one.
Heather.
Hello, Heather.
Morning.
How are you?
Very good, thank you. I'm in a similar environment where we have male-dominated workers, and there's quite a lot of below-the-line behaviour, etc., going on there. I'm wanting to work with that team. You said start where you have influence. What did you actually start with? Like just having a conversation about the deck, etc., or did you actually do like a know yourself or the leadership canvas or something? How do you suggest you, because it's very male orientated and the word emotions will make them go into a tailspin. So,
yeah.
How do you suggest you start in that space?
Great question, mate. Good to see you. Happy smiling face again. I mean, I just really grabbed this thing. I battled with it, tussled with it, really, really confronting. And look, I have to acknowledge, extremely confronting as a female as well, in a male-dominated environment. So I think it's important to just call that out and appreciate that. I literally just took the picture cards off the top of that deck and got the black and white cards, sat down with my GM at the time, and really just sat across her desk with her, beside her, and we did a check-in. And absolutely, it's a bit of an all or nothing move. I mean, courage and bravery and stepping in first is, I think, is a critical part of this work. So, like, yeah, the courage and bravery aspects of it were significant. But I'm a big fan of the greatest challenges come to the best people. You've got to tell yourself that. And just really step into that. So what I did is I literally just did a really basic check-in. All right. So how have you felt the last few days? How's your week been? Let's go through it. Because what I learned in advance of that, just in discussion, was that the literacy wasn't there in terms of, not only for myself, but also for the team, in terms of people were unable to go beyond, how are you? I'm okay. Right. I think it is such a prevalent aspect of understanding emotion and in feelings that many of us are not well versed in labeling of emotions and understanding that. And then there's understanding, am I labeling the right emotion here, right? And so as you advance through the use of this, and what I've seen in the leaders that we've done that with, that literacy builds and they start to regulate a lot more before they're picking the feeling. So an external or internal event is occurring to them and you can see the pauses, right? You can see the regulation practice starting to display in them, some more than others. You know, everyone moves at their own pace with it. So I just did the check-in. My experience with it was, and this happened a lot with my senior team, is what I actually unlocked was a whole lot of trauma in doing it. So I was like, oh God, what have I done? There were lots of tears, and not just in females. And I think, you know, you know, certainly as a male and a leader, manager, your first go-to is I need to fix it. So I worked really hard to stay away from that and just hold space for that, all right, and allow that to come out. And sometimes that meant having a do-over, coming back to it, subject to the level of comfort in the individual. So I was really fortunate with my GM at the time, Sarah. I was an area manager with a cohort of branches. I was very fortunate that she was at least open and curious. So that was really where I started. It's like, hey, look at this cool thing I've got. Yeah, I've been doing this course. It's been amazing. And let's have a crack at it, right? And I built a level of relationship with her and safety with her where I was able to do that. Was I aware of her influence in the organisation? Absolutely. All right. Was there strategic intent? Absolutely. On my behalf. Was it grounded in absolute authenticity and genuine care and consideration and desire for a better organisation and a more human-centred organisation? Absolutely. Right. I think that's really, really important. I don't think you can do this work if you don't really care deeply.
I really appreciated. Oh, he's frozen.
Important. And
oh, Kristian, you were just freezing then.
Yeah, sorry, I'm getting an unstable internet connection thing. Has everyone got me?
Yeah, gotcha now. I was just going to say at the beginning, you said that you rolled it with the senior leadership and you got lots of awkwardness and discomfort. And we've tried a similar thing. There was another person, part of my organization, that tried to use ECD deck with the executive leadership team and had the same experience. And as a result, it hasn't gone any further. So I really appreciated in your story how you didn't just stop at that awkwardness. You kept pushing through.
Yeah, you've got to, you know, the story you tell yourself in your head when you're doing this stuff is probably the one you've really got to be careful of. And certainly that was my learning, right? Is that, you know, riddled with doubt. So you think about some of those feelings that come up, right? And look, even in the last 2 days, hopefully you've still got me. Even in the last 2 days at the conference and the workshop I just ran over that 2-day period, you know, we use Menti quite significantly. That's a separate speaker series by Catherine Riddick. If you haven't seen it, you got to do it. It's amazing. Fantastic way to facilitate large groups through a process. Great with the AI if you've got that access to the Menti. But Heather, even in that last 2 days, I mean, there was a couple of people in that group, some really toxic behaviour there. So we are by no means through or past this in any way, shape, or form, right? And the great thing was that, you know, I was able to call that out in the context of what we were doing, right? How people won't feel encouraged if they believe we're at conferences like this, right? Treating it lightly. Right. So there's ways to assertively call that type of behavior out. And I'm confident and hopeful, right, for all the right reasons that individual will either, you know, at some point look to embrace that, or as an organization, as we embrace this more, we will see that individual out of our organization to somewhere else where they can flourish. All right. Because it's not necessarily happening in now. So they can be personally very challenging things to deal with, especially if you can't come in and leave, right? I got to stay, right? So I feel you, and there's been many times where I have had to, you know, have quiet moments and just say, keep going, right? It's about resilience. It's about resilience and getting back up again. And you know, look, yeah, we've all got, you know, different capabilities and different levels of that. So, but you know, nothing good comes from anything easy, I don't think. And you know, growth and comfort don't exist. You know, you can wheel out all of the cliches and quotes, and they're all really true. It's just about consistency, you know, reverting to it, finding ways. And it wasn't all just a linear path, Heather, either. All right, it was a lot of you know, probing with it, seeing where there was, you know, perhaps not as much resistance, more adoption, more curiosity, and then trying to explore further down that path. So look, long-winded answer. Hopefully a bit of insight in that for you.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's really appreciated. And thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your story with us. Thank you.
No worries, mate. Good to see you.
There's a question in the chat from Kate around the interlink between ECD and safety. Kate, is that kind of what you were asking? If you want to jump off mute and ask your question better than I did, you're more than welcome.
And apologies for being late, apologies for being late, Kristian. I love the fact that you had tied in the activities, and you could see it through in some deliverable measures that the organisation was across and on board with. I was just like quite interested in what you were saying in that safety space, and I was just wondering if you could just add a little bit more colour and context to that. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Great to see your happy smiling face as well. Hope you're well. Okay, so when I think where we really started to see that was when we took we got our branch managers through it. So the initial big shift was the senior leaders and gaining adoption in the senior leaders. And because I was closer to them, it was much easier to work with them around our strategies and our business plan. And articulating these aspects of it, right? So what does that mean for us if we're going to gain these outcomes, and then breaking that down? And I think the issue is that because the safety record, disappointingly, and was so poor, it was in some ways that we were lucky because it was really evident that there clearly were breakdowns there around, you know, the safety leadership. All right. So if we think about sort of the safety management, the metrics and the KPIs, and doing the toolbox talks and the safety alerts and all those things, and then the actual leadership. All right. So, and the goal there was that safe production has to be one word, right? They're not two different things, and getting that integrated. So the first thing we started to do is the first thing we sought to understand is how are our leaders communicating, you know, safety in the business, and that was through what I would say is fairly traditional methods, all right, which is toolbox talks and safety alerts. And then what we did for our division is before they went out, we actually took them and said, okay, we're going to now build in our emotion culture into this, right? So we redefined in the first instance what safety meant. All right. It's not just about looking for hazards. It's not just about, reporting incidents on time. It's not just about ensuring everybody's trained in work instructions, right? What about the psychosocial or psychological aspect of safety, right? How do we know that that's happening, right? How do we know that that's present? So what we tried to do once we'd done our branch leadership workshop, is we made it a real focus of an initial focus of that leadership workshop and the feelings, both desired and undesired, that we defined for ourselves. And what that did was gave those leaders something a little bit more tangible, right, that they were already accountable around and for delivering, to apply it to, right? And the reason we did the branch leadership workshop and we didn't do with those branch leaders the culture crafting workshop, right, which I still to this day sit and go, oh, I'd still love to do that one day, and we probably will, right, was because we just felt that, given their geographical disbursement across the country, and so the minimal amount of times that we see them in person, we thought, in the first instance that taking the leadership perspective might just be a level of separation for them that might gain gain us more traction when it comes to that. And then the second thing is we thought that, then associating it initially with the safety side of things, A, is about getting better outcomes. B, we had levels of absenteeism and turnover. C, we felt that, so underneath all that, if we really applied what we had done with the ECD to that, it was a great way to maybe Trojan horse it further into the organisation, right? And this is a cool thing about, I want to say dumb males, but that's probably not the right thing to say. But because we all have we're all guilty as charged. We all have a boy look and those sorts of things. Is that sometimes the Trojan horse works really good on us, right? I mean, let's be real. You're probably all doing it with your significant others in some way, shape, or form if it's a male. So it. For us, that certainly awakened in them by way of doing that and making that tangible in the toolbox talks and tangible in the safety alerts. And we just wove that in with the language, Kate. So that was really valuable for a whole lot of reasons. And of course, the metric is the safety outcome. So we saw a 40% reduction in our LTIFR rate, so lost time injury frequency rate. We saw a significant increase in our hazards reported. We saw a total inventory frequency rate come down as well. And that journey continues. And we've had lots strings of months without LTIs and those sorts of things in a very high risk workplace. So it's not where it needs to be. It's a long way from it, but certainly we've gained in 12 months a significant amount of progress and impact. And certainly if you look relative to the previous 5 years, that's an outstanding improvement. Does that help?
Yeah, that's great.
Got a following question for me? Come on.
Oh, no. But I might not for today because I think there's some more questions and everyone wants to have a little bit of turn. But I'm really good, and considering it's bright and early for you, Kristian, muchas gracias.
Love you, mate. Good to see you.
I think before Trish, you jump in, I just want to. I think there's a good link between what you're talking about with Kate and Kirsty's question, where she asks, "Do you feel like it's at a point yet that you could leave and this work would still continue?" Or are they still reliant on your leadership? Kirsty,
who asked that question?
I think it would be quite good too for you to show them. I've seen your Miro board. That would be quite a good way of linking those two together.
There you are. Hello.
When you were answering Heather's question, it just was something I was thinking about in terms of like having someone internally in the business who's obviously really influential, and particularly now that you're in the GM role as well and being male and all that kind of stuff. I just wonder whether it's getting to a point yet that you're able to kind of go, I could leave and it would continue, or is it still very much being driven by you?
Great question. Love it. Was on my mind throughout the last 2 years, all the time, and really, runs to the heart of scaling inside organisations. I have to just, give my appreciation and thanks to Jeremy Dean. Not only for the whole reason I'm here presenting to you, but just the most amazing community. But what I mean by that is just the way that he has continued to design and iterate and evolve and improve, this work and what we're doing, and look for ways to do this. And there's just so much awesome, nuanced strategy underneath what he has done with it that I just really love, because my strengths are I'm an arranger, achiever, strategic communicator, learner. So with all the weaknesses that go with it, including just being way overly verbose, so I apologise to everybody on this call. But Kirsty, we've been able to build that capability more broadly. I only presented to the board on this, hence that slide I showed. I only presented to the board on this about a month ago. So we've been doing this work almost underground in the division for 18 months, right? And so it was demonstrating that result. My senior team have been fantastic in almost, in almost becoming practitioners themselves without being certified or qualified, just by way of association with me and taking it forward. And to answer your question more directly, what was really cool was to go through our regular performance development process and have some of my team members come forward requesting further development, specifically around emotional leadership and emotional culture, which of course then segues me into the recent changes and shifts in with Riders and Elephants and the ECD and the emotional leadership, stakeholder culture and change courses that are now available. Now, I'm qualified to do a couple of them, still working my way through that. They're really cool. I love them. We're going to do it. And funnily enough, yesterday I had a number of very senior, let's say GMs and people in development team come to me and ask, hey, how do we certify in this? How can we now continue to maintain that critical mass and momentum? So yeah, I would say we're there in terms of got some unqualified practitioners who we will now probably shift towards certifying, probably initially in the leadership side of things, framework side of things, and then we'll probably flesh out from there. Have done some stakeholder workshops as well with internal departments, just around understanding their internal customer, and that's been really successful as well. And I can probably demonstrate one of them. So hopefully that answers for you, mate.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Kristian. You've done an awesome job.
Thanks. Do you want me to, should I? Oh, sorry. Hi, Trish. How are you?
Hi, Kristian. Thanks so much for the share. Can you hear me okay? I'm on a very old laptop because I've had big technical problems too. Am I coming through okay?
Yeah, your audio is fine. Yep.
Cool. Okay. Probably some of my questions have been answered by your by answering Kirsty's, but I was just curious about the time frame from when go to woe, or from start to where you are now. But I think you've answered that. Has it been around a 2-year journey so far?
Yeah, Trish, it has. Yes, absolutely. And look, I mean, I was one of those silly suckers who basically did the ECD masterclass and then literally went, screw it, let's do it, and went straight into the certified consultant course, which was just so I went through this really significant sort of 9 months personal transformation, really powerful. I'll never forget facing the procrastination of just simply trying to do the leading self aspects of that course. So the Know Yourself handbook, I look back on it and I face so many of the weaknesses that I have whilst being able to sort of maybe turn more towards my strengths. And at the same time, we were, I was just literally implementing in the organisation. I was just stepping into that and giving that a crack. I look back on it now and think, gee, I did a great job. At the time, I was just shitting myself. Excuse my French. Anyway.
Indeed, I can imagine. Yes, it does. Thank you. I'm curious about the board and the directors, and I noticed that they were quite a way down the pyramid. So obviously they weren't involved in this kind of approach to culture change, but I am curious about how they received it and what their involvement was.
Yeah, so they were aware to some extent, and I think just watching from afar, I'd suggest that in that board, perhaps we found the source, as you'd expect, of the prevailing culture. And so many things were said without anybody speaking. And so, there was obviously a need to be quite delicate there. But I had the ultimate Trojan horse in the family successor, the female GM I worked with. I cannot thank her enough for her courage and openness, especially in that workplace. And we just felt the timing was right with this group conference. So we just did the same thing. We just added a special item onto the senior leadership, the board meeting, and we just did a check-in. And two things really came out of it. They were amazing at it. I mean, Jeremy had a quite there. People want to talk about this, they just don't know how. Absolutely, they were fantastic at it. Did really well with the check-in. But you could see just straight after it, when we started to move on to other things, you could almost see the aha moments, like settling on them, right? Where they and I just worked really hard to just articulate, right, what they were saying with various different sort of tangible management outcomes, right, business outcomes. Again, to try and keep the language and keep the application evident for them. All right. I don't like saying the word fluffy because I just don't associate it with it. But if you talk about perceptions of things being fluffy, I tried to steer away from that. Yeah. Right.
Hopefully and just my last question, if I have time. Yes, it has. Yes, definitely. Just one last question, if that's okay, Kaylee. Can I do one more quickly?
Yeah, good as gold. We've got a couple on the chat, but
the embedding into, I love that you've said, that culture is lived, not laminated, and in terms of the organisation embodying it, I think you touched on this earlier, but in terms of how embedded is it now into like weekly team meetings, keeping it alive and going. I mean, are you grabbing the deck and using the deck on a weekly basis, at that level, or do you kind of gone hard in and now pull back a wee bit and do check-ins like on a monthly basis, or what's the vision for keeping it alive and going?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. It's different at different levels. So down at the branch manager level, and there's a change coming. We've kept it light, use of the tools, but they do weekly retros and intention setting, right? So what I would call a traditional stand-up. So they do that with their senior team, so leading hands and their senior team underneath them that contain their direct reports. In a given location, there's anywhere from 25 to 70 employees. So, we always have to be respectful about that's where the work's got to be done. That's where we have the most impact and gain the most scale. And so I'd say the stand up and the use of it in the stand up. So and what we've encouraged them to do is just do the check-ins, right? In our performance and development reviews, we actually do the more formal check-in. All right, current state, desired state. All right. What's the intensity level there? What do I think the gaps are from? How can I reframe moving forward and set my intention? And I have tried to communicate reframing as a regulation technique in the business, right? It's that little space in between, the external or internal stimulus, the feeling I choose, all right? So ownership for feelings has been important, not you made me feel, all right? I chose to feel this way based upon something you may have done. And building that language and literacy, I think, along with vulnerability. So we've got plenty of it built into lots of little routines. Now the branch managers are about to move to this next financial year to more formal monthly check-in around desired, undesired emotions, and also quarterly reflection in a more formal way, which I'll demonstrate on the Miro board. So what we've got this approach, Trish, of just start small and then be ready to build further, right? And because as that capability and literacy improves, those psychological barriers for them using these tools are diminishing and decreasing, right? Because there's levels of confidence and we're building that emotional capability like any other skill in the business, right? It's a human skill. Yeah.
Love that, Kristian. Lots of gold in that response. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Before I get to you, Suzanne, Desley's got even more technical difficulties than everybody else here today. She can't unmute. So I'm just going to give her question because it was very early on. She wanted to know, do you help people make a connection between their home lives improving by applying ECD principles? And if you do, is it overtly or indirectly at all?
Oh, my goodness, it's both. Great question. And I'd even go as far to say, and I could be being biased here, so forgive me, but in males especially, that is like the secret sauce in this, right? The amount of men in my organisation who've come up to me holding back tears, right? And if you've ever seen, baby boomer Gen X grown men cry, it's not awesome. It's not attractive anyway. I mean, it's made me a highly emotional person, or certainly unlocked a lot of emotion in me. The construction industry is a very, very difficult industry. If you've had anything to do it, you will know what I'm talking about, right? But just trust me, it's extremely difficult. Things are all about price, scope, and program. Timelines are tight. There's very, very little forgiveness in this space at all. And, you know, that is probably more a sign of that industry and where things need to change as well, around a little bit more compassion. So having them come up to me, you know, with that emotional and bubbling on the surface and talk about discussions they've had with their wives, right? The disconnection in their relationships due to how much hard work they're doing or discretionary time they're putting in, and how this has improved it. Relationships with their children. You know, as a father of two neurodiverse kids, you know, autism, ADHD. I know there's a lot of people on here who can identify. It's just been super, super powerful in building better understanding and trust, and helping my connection with my kids and helping them to articulate how they might feel, right? Which can sometimes be difficult. The feelings are there. You know, the ability to articulate them can be quite challenging. And trying to build that early in my 10-year-old boy, and seeing that happen and seeing his vocabulary and literacy around that improve has just been the most wonderful thing. So great question, Desley. Sorry, I can't talk to you directly. Both indirect and direct, to be clear. And again, we've really just basically taken that person to person, subject to how they show up. And fantastic to see my managers doing that with their teams, and see that rippling through as well. The really interesting thing about that is that when it's something so personal like that, and maybe Jeremy designed it this way, but it really drives the confidence in those people, right? And their commitment to it then when they're using it in the workplace. Okay, because it's intrinsically become part of what they do, and how they operate. And so, like I said earlier, unlocking lots of trauma, overcoming lots of that in both males and females. You know, and if you take a moment to think about the minorities in that type of workplace, females are one. And, you know, we're talking about people who haven't worked anywhere else, very long tenures, so they don't know what anything else looks like. They don't necessarily know what good looks like. Seeing them come out of that, unlocking and unleashing their potential, seeing them flourish from that, and open right up and step into vulnerability and those sorts of things has just been the most rewarding thing that I'll take with me wherever I end up. Yeah, so hopefully that's helped answer the question. Kaylee, are there any more? Did we want to flip over to the Miro? I see we've got 6 minutes left.
We have 2 more, but I think the Miro is really important for people to see. Suzanne, if you want to chuck your question in the chat, we can either tackle it straight away, or we can come back to it. Either Kristian or myself or the wider team can come back to it as well. Maybe take it for ongoing conversation. But Rachel's question, as you kind of bring up your Miro board to show everyone, it might help as well. She sits in an HR with a very technical male-dominated workforce across engineering and manufacturing, a bit like you. Her question is, would it be better to get a business kind of skilled up, get someone to help influence the culture, or be led by her versus external consultant? What's your opinion on that? Like, get someone else to come in and help spur that on, or for her to kind of lead it herself within the organisation?
Yeah, that's a great question, and probably I'd love to talk to you about that beyond this call. Probably needs a bit more context for me, because it's very nuanced, and look, I'm going to call out that it could be very, very different and have very, very different challenges subject to your gender, right? I get that, and I acknowledge that shouldn't be the way. You know, and that is probably one of the disheartening and disappointing aspects of some organisations. So the only way I could answer that without more context, and like I said, I'm more than happy to catch up with you outside of that to talk about that further, maybe in a bit more of a safer space for you and I, but would be to you know, you've got to really gauge that, and you've really got to understand that more deeply, which it sounds like based on the question you do, and just, you know, you know, if you need to work through someone, then I think it's important to do that. Ironically, I actually worked through a female, right, because she was a family-owned business successor and also a director at the time, right? So, albeit she was sort of a beacon of hope and amongst, you know, perhaps a lot of individuals who weren't interested. So that's a really good example of me just finding a way through, I think, to maybe demonstrate that. So I apologise that I can't answer that more directly, but again, would love to talk to you further about it if you're open to it.
Thanks, Kristian.
Okay.
I totally understand.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. So 3 minutes. So I'm going to take you through it real quick. So hopefully everyone can see it. Is that? Can someone just verbally let me know they can see it?
Yeah, all good.
Okay. So hopefully the zooming doesn't stuff up the frame rate on your screen, but pretty traditional culture canvas. Traditional, I don't know if it's traditional, but culture canvas here. So you can see the desired, undesired feeling. So this was the senior team. And look, one thing I will say about rituals and actions, and I'm looking at you, Lottie, is that, you know, that piece was really challenging, okay, and I think is very challenging in traditional businesses. And so anything we can do to articulate that well and find ways to design that well is important. Perhaps a prevailing view that rituals are these sort of, you know, unusual, abstract type things that occur, and they are in some businesses, especially if we move into the startup world. We chose to keep ours a little bit more routine based, and then by weaving in aspects of the ECD as part of that, or our emotional culture as part of that. Okay, so that was the traditional, the senior leadership canvas that really probably started the downstream emotional contagion, right? And again, you know, there's quite a bit over there in the undesired around being able to call urgent help meetings. We were dealing with some pretty tough undesired feelings there. Certainly the process of working through that was valuable. Over to the branch manager team. So we've done a couple of things with them, as I described. So the first thing we did was the leadership canvas. Excuse me. Okay, you're playing with me today. Hopefully, sorry, I'm on a keyboard that's not friendly for me. Hopefully, you can see that okay. So that was the leadership aspect of it with the branches, and of course, real simple things like always having a monthly barbecue celebrating milestones, right? That's appreciated and supported, right? Also connected, break bread with people. For a lot of males and male-dominated industries, the process of eating and breaking bread is important. One-on-ones, so on and so forth. Okay. We then also ran, and thank you to Denise, certified master, I think now, we used the Exploring Change canvas, and we actually explored a change through current state, future state, etc. And that was all geared around moving towards a performance culture with greater levels of accountability. Okay, so it's about facing some brutal truths, etc. I spoke very briefly about our business support team. Okay, so our business support team supports that branch team. We took them through a stakeholder journey, okay, as well as mapping the key moments, you know, which ones were critical, just around what, you know, good support looks like for their customer, and then we unpack that into the rituals canvas for them as well. And then I'm running out of time. We just 2 days ago completed a master, what I call a master, for the entire group. And we're about to now undertake 5 divisional workshops. So what we decided to do was collectively agree on our desired and undesired feelings, work through the empathy, a little bit of cleanup to do there, but work through the empathy and the undesired behaviours. Use Miro in the Menti, again, highly recommend it. You know, watch Catherine's video. Helped us, you know, with obviously the requirement to gather so much. We had to do things like minimize table-to-table share, but obviously we had enough numbers for those intra-table shares to be really valuable. And we're now going to complete the remainder of that canvas on a divisional basis. So there'll be basically 5 canvases, all with the collective guiding feelings unpacked into very specific rituals and actions for each division. Not all of them are geographically dispersed like me. So again, it's important, I think, to recognise differences, and in fact, you know, we need to support and explore them further. Yeah. So hopefully, little bit of insight there for everybody. And my advice on that is get good at Miro. It's really easy. Use the controls in Miro, so you can set things up, you can lock things down. People can absolutely stuff it up for you, so you've got to be pretty good with your design around that. Once you've done it once, you just duplicate things, which is really cool. You can duplicate boards, duplicate things, you can hide things, you can get tricky with bias. One thing I didn't show, which now I'm super disappointed about, is and I'm just going to do it anyway, and be rebellious right now, Kaylee, I'm sorry. And if you need to go, I totally understand it. I really want to show you this. So Canvas here. Yeah, and here are our monthly trackers. We started out with no boundaries around participation. We then started to build informal reflections here. So hopefully you can see this. You can see participation was average, but still good. The beginnings of something great. The team themselves then, as we moved forward, decided that they wanted to know who was who in the zoo with this stuff. Belonging and trust and vulnerability was fostered and built. Some really wonderful moments that mattered, lots of emotions in that quarterly process as well. I'm sorry for all the scrolling around and zooming. And that continues for us now. And in fact, what we do now is we actually put private mode on. So a little bit of an insight there into how you can track. We made a decision not to actually make that, quantify that. We felt that would tarnish what we were doing, which was really interesting. We wanted to keep it qualitative. But certainly, different things show up for different people. We've got really great practices around that now. Reflection and review is a significant piece of what we do. It's making us better. It's building our momentum. And we're about to launch that with our branch managers in the coming financial year as well. So hopefully you got some value from that.
There's a lot of everyone's questions about your integration and how it's actually played out in your world, and as there's lots of comments coming in being like, oh my gosh, this looks amazing. I just want to, I know everyone has to rush off to other things, so I just thank you so much for your work. It's really impressive. Your honesty and dedication really shines through, and it's inspiring to hear how much you've integrated emotional culture into such a complex work environment. It's clear that work takes heart, persistence and real leadership, and we're really grateful to have you share that journey with us. So thanks again for being here, and everyone that's on thing, give them a great big round of applause. Thank you for your kind words, Kaylee. I'm honoured, grateful, humble. Thank you so much. Respect everybody in this community. It's really, really, really nice to be able to have the opportunity. I hope you have a really great day and the rest of the week. Thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you. Thanks, Kristian.
See you later, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, Kristian.
You're welcome.
Thank you.